On March 14, 2018, one of the world's most renowned scientists passes away. Every social media platform and news station are completely flooded with stories about his contributions to science and his passing. No matter where you looked, people were paying their respects and giving their condolences for his passing. I'm referring to the one and only Stephen Hawking. Stephen Hawking, as most of you know, had a rare form of motor neuron disease, and he was diagnosed at the young age of 21. But he never let that interfere with his love and passion for science. Personally, whenever I think of Stephen Hawking, the first word that comes to mind is just smart. As many of you know, his intellectual capability had little to do with his disability. However, when we can see past that, we still seem to be turning a blind eye to other promising scientists with disabilities in STEM. If someone has the qualifications to work in a STEM environment, then they should feel welcomed to do so, as well as be evaluated equally, just as we are now doing for women and people of color. If you were to look at a job requirement, all that you really need is a certain education level, a pretty resume, a background check, maybe an interview. But could you imagine if Stephen Hawking was even denied that opportunity to work in a university, to work in a lab, because nobody would even give him the chance, simply because of his disability? Could you imagine if the phonograph, one of the first inventions of a recording device, was absolutely rejected because its inventor, Thomas Edison, was deaf since he was born? Thomas Edison just saw his disability as a wondrous way to simply focus on his work in a world of silence. We owe these scientists, with their innovative minds and their different ideas, at least a fair chance to participate in STEM rather than holding on to an outdated bias. It's so important to continue to diversify our workforce, as we are, as I mentioned, doing with women and people of color now, because they come from different backgrounds and different experiences. They have a different outlook on life that we are not familiar with. They can bring in ideas that we couldn't even fathom. It's so important to continue implementing these people into the STEM community. By the way, everything I'm talking about also applies to people with mental disabilities. If you have depression or severe anxiety or anything that could possibly interfere in your life, it is completely up to you to even disclose that information to your employer. All of that is up to your discretion. You know yourself better than your boss or your superior, your supervisor. So if you feel you do not need to disclose that information, there's absolutely no obligation to do so. There are nearly 16 million Americans living with diagnosed depression. That does not mean that there are nearly 16 million people incapable of working. All of these people, if they wanted to come to the STEM community, they should feel welcome to. They should feel that their ideas are valued. They should feel that they can come into the STEM community and their contributions would be taken just as anybody who was a woman or a person of color or just a regular white male. I believe that if STEM companies want to continue diversifying their workforce, then they need to begin implementing programs to include scientists with disabilities, just as they are now doing for women and other minorities. Everyone should feel welcomed in the world of science. Thank you.